Mao killed more than Hitler. Let's talk about ignorant and stupid anti-communism, which is way too common, not just from fascists.
America is never going to be communist.
Those crazy communists?
But also from liberals and leftists. And by the way, I use the term ignorant and stupid anti-communism because ignorant just means you don't know. Stupid means you don't know how to think. Case in point, recently an anti-Trump activist told us he didn't want to work with Refuse Fascism because the Revcoms, revolutionary communists, are involved in it, and Mao killed more than Hitler. There is so much wrong with this statement. A, Mao didn't kill more than Hitler. B, we Revcoms base ourselves on the new communism developed by Bob Avakian, which is very different and much better than what came before. And C, none of this is a good reason not to join together to fight the Trump fascism we're all facing now. But let's get into this Mao killed more than Hitler thing. First of all, you do know how many people Hitler killed, right? In addition to the 6 million Jews, the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union led to the deaths of about 25 million people there. Plus about 5 million Germans were killed in battle, plus millions more from the US, UK, France, Italy, China, Yugoslavia, Poland died fighting against the Nazis. So if you add that up, it's about 40 million people. So what's your source for the claim that Mao killed more than 40 million people? Or is it just something that you heard and you're uncritically repeating it? A few years ago, I was at an elite college and a student actually told me that Mao killed 500 million people. I was like, you do know that there were only about 500 million people in China when Mao came to power, right? People just make shit up.
Mao killed 10 million people in China. I'll see your 10 million and raise you 10 million more. Mao killed 20 million people. I'll see your 20 million and double it. Mao killed 40 million people.
So when and how exactly did Mao kill so many people? Was it during the Cultural Revolution that you've heard so many bad things about? No, there was no mass murder during the Cultural Revolution. There was mass democracy, millions of people coming into the public square, criticizing leaders, overturning old ideas and ways of doing things. And yes, there was some violence during the upheaval, but this was opposed by Mao. In fact, the whole point of the Cultural Revolution was to prevent capitalism from being restored and continue the revolution by mobilizing the conscious activism of the people, discussing and debating which way forward, and not to carry out the kind of purges and executions that Stalin had done. Or maybe you think Mao killed more than Hitler because of the famine that happened between 1959 and 1961 during the Great Leap Forward. But what's your source on this? Did you Google it? Did you see it on Wikipedia? And by the way, crowdsourcing information, especially in a capitalist system that brainwashes people with capitalist ideology and promotes capitalist ideas, is not a good way to tell what's actually true. But if you do go to Wikipedia, you'll see that there's a pretty wide range of statistics on famine deaths, from 2.6 million to 55 million, which might give you a clue that there's something fishy going on here. Yes, there was a terrible famine in China during this time period, and many people did die, but no one actually knows how many people because there wasn't reliable census info at the time. And in fact, many of the death toll statistics that these scholars are coming up with are based on calculating lost births as deaths. In other words, fewer babies were born during these famine years because it was a famine, and yet these get counted as deaths. But let's put aside the specific body count for a sec and ask, did Mao kill all these people like how Hitler killed the Jews and slaughtered people throughout Eastern Europe? No. Not even close. There were three main causes of the famine. One, China suffered some of the worst drought and flooding of the century, which devastated agriculture and food supply. This was the main cause. The food just wasn't there. Two, the Soviet Union actually split with China during this time period, taking away resources and burdening China with debt that had to be paid. Three, there were real political mistakes and economic mismanagement by the Communist Party. But when Mao found out about the hunger crisis, he made major political and economic adjustments to try to deal with it. So no, this is not a man-made famine, like what Israel and the US are doing right now in Gaza, where the food is literally sitting right outside the gates and being prevented from coming in by the political leaders. Exactly the opposite. Did you know any of this? Have you looked into it? Or are you just regurgitating the bullshit you've been told about communism? Now, let's talk about how many lives Mao saved. Do you have any idea what China was like before the revolution? Ruled by a handful of rich landowners, warlords, and foreign capitalists? The 25,000 people who died on the streets of Shanghai every year? The parents who had to sell their children just to survive? Did you know that life expectancy in 1949 when Mao came to power was 32 years? And it doubled to 65 years when Mao died in 1976? Did you know that by the 1970s, Maoist China had the most egalitarian healthcare system in the world, reaching into the rural areas with barefoot doctors and eliminating diseases that had plagued China for centuries? Did you know that the Nobel Prize-winning economist Amartya Sen calculated that if capitalist India had the same healthcare system system as China under Mao, about 4 million people per year would have been saved, which adds up to about 100 million people over those years? Did you know that Mao and the Chinese communists kicked out the colonial powers who had carved up and plundered China, massively redistributed land, and ended the horrific patriarchal practice of foot binding, as well as prostitution and opium addiction? By the way, not by criminalizing prostitutes and drug addicts, but by giving people meaningful lives and creating a society where workers, peasants, and women were not objects to be exploited, but were taking center stage in building a new society. Let's talk about the ethos in Maoist China of serve the people, and how radically different that is, and so much better than the me culture of this capitalist society. Now, to be clear, there were serious problems in the Chinese Revolution, as well as the Russian Revolution, that did lead to bad things, some of them very bad. But that's just the point. This was humanity's first baby steps beyond capitalism. And now, thanks to decades of work that Bob Avakian has done, there's a new communism, which builds on the accomplishments of these past revolutions, which we don't get told about, but also breaks with and discards a lot of wrong thinking, wrong methods, and wrong practices that undermine these revolutions. For example, and this wasn't the cause of the famine in China, but one contributing factor was that local Communist Party officials were exaggerating how much food was being produced in order to prove their loyalty to socialism. Because under Mao, communism was the official ideology. And it wasn't like you were killed for disagreeing with that, but there definitely was a lot of pressure to get in line with that. And that definitely undercut the kind of critical thinking and fearless truth-telling that are so essential to a vibrant society. So what Bob Avakian is putting forward with the new communism is that we need a very different atmosphere in the new socialist system, where people can surface problems and disagreements, where dissent and intellectual ferment and critical thinking are fostered, at the same time and as part of the process of radically transforming the economy, politics, and culture to uproot and abolish all forms of oppression and exploitation. And that's the point. We do need a revolution, and there's a much better way we could be living. I mean, even if you take the most ridiculously inflated numbers about the death toll of communism, it pales in comparison to the death toll of capitalism in its normal workings, killing millions and millions every year from war, starvation, and preventable disease. Not to mention the spirit-crushing suffocation of just living in a system that doesn't give a damn about you. So if you can't stand the world the way it is, the white supremacy and misogyny, the terror against immigrants, the destruction of the environment, the anti-scientific lunacy, the iron fist of capitalist dictatorship smashing everything true and decent right now, the new communism is for you, because it's the only way to actually address the things you care about. So instead of mindlessly mouthing this system's anti-communist brainwash, look into Bob Avakian and this new communism for yourself with an open mind, and let's discuss and debate it while we stand together side by side in the fight to defeat this fascism that now threatens all of us.